If you've purchased our Wabi-Sabi Japanese knot bag kit, we include a piece of plain lining for the bag, but feel free to replace it with a lining of your choice. We also include your printed bag panel in the fabric of your choice. We have lots of beautiful fabric prints to choose from. We also include a piece of lightweight fusible interfacing for you to use to back your fabric panel. All our kits come with printed patterns. This means you can use your pattern to create lots more bags in your own fabric in the future. This pattern has a difficulty level of beginner. The pattern also includes a cutting out guide. The start of every successful sewing project is to gather together everything you need before you start. You'll need a sewing machine or a sewing needle and some good quality sewing thread. Some paper scissors, fabric scissors and some thread snips are useful but not essential. We don't use pins at Wabi-Sabi. Instead, we use fabric clips. I keep mine in my Wabi-Sabi purse. You'll need some fabric weights to hold your pattern pieces down. Fabric marker pens are also really useful. I use adhesive seam tape. It really helps when making these tiny garments. For this project, you'll also need some lightweight fusible interfacing. You'll find some in your kit. You can also find this in our Etsy shop. With our kit, you'll also receive a link to a full-size Japanese knot bag pattern over on our blog site. Simply download the PDF and piece together to make one for yourself. The full-size bag is easy to make as it's bigger, so not as fiddly as the tiny one you're making for your Wabi-Sabi character. The first step is to stabilise our fabric and give it some body. To do this, we will fuse our couture weight fusible interfacing to the back of the bag pieces before we cut them out. The bumpy side is the sticky side, and this goes to the wrong side of the fabric. The smooth side is the non-sticky side. So place the wrong side of the bag panel to the adhesive side of the fusible interfacing. It's worth checking how much heat and pressure you will need for the fabric on a small scrap piece before you work with your main fabric. As we print and cut the fabric, the grain may shift a little, so take some time to gently pull the fabric into position so that it looks straight. When you're happy, trim down the interfacing so that it's the same size as your bag panel, preferably with no overlapping edges, as they will stick to your ironing board. It's important to note that applying fusible interfacing is not ironing. It's a combination of heat and pressure that melts the adhesive and fuses it to the fabric permanently. Do not use an ironing motion. From the fusing side, press down and leave the iron in place for several seconds. Your trial piece will tell you how long. Here you can see that the fabric is now fused to the interfacing, giving it body and structure. I've gone ahead and cut out my pattern. You also have a cutting guide supplied on the pattern sheet for when you make more bags. You may notice that the pattern pieces and the bag shape may not match exactly. This is due to the printing process and it will not affect our bag at all. We will use our pattern as a guide to mark on the notches later. Let's cut out the shapes just outside the outer edge. We hate waste at Wabi-Sabi, so we printed some small logo squares on the spare space on your panel. You could use them as labels on your full-size bag, or perhaps you have other ideas and we would love to see what you make. Be sure to post your ideas on our Facebook page or let us know on Instagram. Now use the pattern shapes themselves to cut out the lining pieces. This makes sure that they're exactly the same as the bag. Go ahead and cut out. Now use the pattern to mark notches on the fabric pieces. We need to mark the same distance from the top on each fabric piece. It doesn't matter that your fabric piece may be slightly longer than the pattern shape itself. I use a dissolvable fabric marker for this. But if you don't have a fabric marker, you can make a very tiny snip into your fabric. You will need to flip your pattern piece to mark the second shape. We're now ready to start sewing. Take the bag pieces and place them with the right sides together, matching the edges perfectly. Do the same for the lining pieces and place them with the right sides together. Now prepare to sew the base of the bag from one notch to the other matching notch, with the edges matching. Also hold in place the bag handle seams as they will be sewn across. Do this for bag and lining pairs. If you need to remark the notches, then do so. To recap, you'll be sewing from one notch to the other notch and then straight across at the top of the bag handles. You can see that I've stitched the base of the bag from notch to notch, and I've back tacked to secure the stitches, and also across the top of the straps. Trim all the loose threads. To make things easier for later, we also need to press the bag strap side seams back. It's a little fiddly, but this preparation will help a lot. Make sure as you press the seams back that the bag strap seam at the top remains flat and open. You're simply pressing the hem back. This is where adhesive seam tape really helps to hold these tricky hems in position. Place the seam tape to the edge of where you want the seam to fold back. And snip in line with the notch. Peel back the seam tape and hold the seam allowance back in position. Again, make sure the top strap seam stays open. If you don't have adhesive seam tape, then press the hems back. Watch your fingers. This stage is preparation for the last step in the process of making the bags. It is a little fiddly with such a small bag. Repeat the steps for the bag lining. You can see that both the main bag and the bag lining are prepared with the seams fixed or pressed back. Turn the bag lining through to the right side. Use your fingers to shape the lining. Now place the lining inside the main bag so that the right sides of the bag fabric and the lining fabric are together. Match them so that they lie perfectly inside each other, paying particular attention to matching the bag handle seams at the top, and make sure that the seam allowance at the bag handle seams is open. Hold the two layers together with clips. Now sew around where you've held the two edges together, taking the 6mm seam allowance. Be careful to make sure the fabrics lay flat when you sew around the curves. Having sewn around the bag opening, we need to clip into the seam allowance before we turn it through. This allows the fabric to sit perfectly with no tight pinches. When clipping in, be very careful to snip just within the line of stitching. Clipping in allows the fabric to open up and sit correctly. Now gently pull the lining through and use your hands to manipulate the fabric until it sits correctly. The warmth of your fingers will help. Roll the seam edges with your fingers until you are happy with them. Now the fiddly work we did before, pressing the seam allowance back, helps. All that remains is to close up these open seams. I would suggest hand stitching is best here, as the small gap is quite hard to get your machine foot inside. However, I am going to machine stitch mine in place for speed. Make sure the seams match at the bottom of the handles and hold them in position, ready to sew. Whether you choose to hand stitch or machine stitch, the choice is yours to make. Stitch right at the edge of the folded back seam allowance to hold it in place. I really would recommend hand stitching unless you're an experienced machinist. You can see that I've top stitched right on the very edge of the seam to hold the two edges together. Snip and neaten your loose threads. Use the warmth of your fingers to pull the bag into shape. Pass the longer strap through the shorter strap to form the knot. If you've managed to make this tiny bag, then don't forget you can make a full size one with your free pattern. Making the full size one is much easier than making the tiny one. Now it's time to try the bag out for size. I think Nico really loves it. See you next time for more exciting Wabi-Sabi projects. Coming soon, our Wabi-Sabi mouse.